Arizona Cardinals. Red Sea, rise up. Los Angeles Rams. Let's go, Ramley. Seattle Seahawks. Let's go, 12, get loud. San Francisco 49ers. Home of the faithful. Quest for the West.
Hey everyone, Quest for the West is back. We took a elongated break. Evan was out. He was at games in Arizona and having fun and was, family holiday. Sam dealing with the same thing and I was not around, so it was really hard to coordinate schedules. But holidays are over, right? That's all done now, and now we got Week 18 and basically a wrap up of the NFC West and what is going on here. And a lot of things have changed during this little bit of a time off for us. When we kind of took a break, Arizona still had full control of the NFC West, but things have very quickly shifted. And the Rams now, the lowly Rams down there with no one to represent them. And if you want to represent the Rams, you should reach out and contact us at 49erscutback@gmail.com. But that's beside the point, because the Rams have now seized control of the NFC West, and really it's win and take the NFC West crown coming into this week. Evan, what has happened with the Cardinals? They went on a little bit of elongated losing streak there, but they bounced back in a big way in Week 17, taking down the Cowboys, who were kind of red hot. And I don't think a lot of people thought the Cardinals were going to be able to do that. What's going on with this football team?
What did I tell you all through the first 7 or 8 weeks of the whole season? Was I not the most reserved Cardinals fan you ever witnessed?
Yes.
So what happened was exactly what I expected to happen. Kliff Kingsbury got in his own way. When we were winning, when we were 7-0, 8-0, whatever it was, how we started, and ultimately 10-2, we were running the ball at about 52 to 55% of the time each game. Now what does he do? He gets like 12 carries going out. Makes absolutely no sense. So we stopped running the ball. Kyler Murray gets injured, obviously takes some time to come back. He was out for a total of 36 days from when he left on that Thursday night Packers game to when he came back against Chicago. So that takes some time to get back, get adjusted. And then we've dealt with a lot of COVID protocol stuff. Our offensive line was decimated. Our defensive secondary is currently decimated, and we're starting to get a little bit of help back, especially on the D line. No news on JJ Watt. No news on DeAndre Hopkins yet. That was a big thing during the season when both guys got injured, is they weren't going to get surgery so that they could come back. D-Hop decided to get it, but still he got like the secondary surgery. I forget how they worded it, basically, so that he could come back if we make a playoff run. So here we go. Playoffs are coming up. No word yet. But Kliff Kingsbury happened. He just got away from what was winning and decided to be too cute. I mean, against the Rams on Monday Night Football, we had 6 opportunities to get in the red zone, ran it 1 time, got in there, threw it the other 5 times, got nowhere, and even threw a pick, and that was kind of that. So sadly, Kliff Kingsbury got in his own way, but you know what? Something we haven't seen from him was a win after a devastating loss. We lost 2 games last year in a row to the Niners and to the Rams to get into the playoffs. Didn't have a chance to recover. Well, you know what? We lost 3 in a row. We lost to the Lions, and we came back in a big way after Dallas scored 56. So there's hope at the end of the tunnel. There's light there. A lot of Cardinals fans are reserved. It's wait and see whether we win or lose. But you know what? Kliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray got to the playoffs, and they won 11 games. What more can you say at the end of the day? That is improvement every single year. And that's where we are, and it's not where we thought we would be, but we're in the playoffs. And I'm sure Sam could ask to be in that position, right, Sam?
Sure could. I really wish I could, just rubbing it in a little bit.
Hey man, it's a-okay. It's been a rough year for the Seattle Seahawks. It's been up and down. It's been a little bit all over the place. And there's a lot of things happening now. I mean, it's looking like 6-10 is what the record currently sits at, correct? So you got one more game, you get yourself to 7-10 on the season, at least end on a high note. But there's question marks up in the air now with the Seattle Seahawks. Is Russ coming back? Was this Russ's swan song in Seattle? And funny enough, I had a bunch of flight issues on the way home. I ended up getting to fly into Seattle. And I actually flew into Seattle with a Seattle fan who was going to a game for the very first time at Lumen Field, who's flying out of Chicago. He's a Seattle fan that lives in Chicago, was flying to Lumen to watch Russell Wilson's last home game there for the Seattle Seahawks because he's convinced he's gone. Sam, how are you feeling this? Is this the end of the Russ era in Seattle? Is this the end of the Pete Carroll era? What's going on with the Seattle team? Is this going to be a completely new look team heading into this 2022-2023 season?
That's kind of been the question ever since we got eliminated from the playoffs last week versus the Bears and virtually versus the Rams 2 weeks ago. And it's really going to come down to it. It seems like Russ does not want to leave, at least what he said in interviews, but that is nothing because interviews in the grand scheme of things, they're kind of fabricated. Russ, he doesn't want to say anything. He doesn't want to say, well, we're going to see what happens in the off season because that's going to create a ton of distractions. He wants to say, I'm in Seattle for right now. And that's where I'm at. And frankly, I don't think his camp feels that way because Sunday morning, Adam Schefter drops a report. It's like, this is the league-wide feelings are that Russ and Pete, this would be their last game at Lumen Field together. And throughout the report, they like claimed that league-wide feelings and sources, those are the only people who said anything, which immediately led people onto the trail that Russell Wilson's camp, which has done this before, put out some sneaky little article where they basically are trying to claim that this is Russ's last game. And the Pro Football Talk did a whole breakdown of this. And virtually what they said is he thinks Russ's camp is making it very clear to John Schneider and what they have to do. It's Russell Wilson or it's Pete Carroll. I really do think that's what they're trying to do. And you look at what happened last year. Every team that Russ asked to go to last year, or at least his agent said that he would like to go to next year or last year, all had offensive coaches. Pete is not only a defensive coach, he's an old school defensive coach. He loves those 13-10 wins where he dominates time of possession, which has kind of awkwardly been the opposite this year. We've actually been the worst in the league by time of possession and actually one of the worst of all time by average time of possession per game. So I think Russ's team is making it very clear that at least they do not like Pete Carroll because he probably makes his quarterback look a little worse, makes their quarterback look a little worse because he doesn't get to throw the ball as much. They're winning these short, ugly games where Russ isn't playing well at all. And frankly, for Seahawks fans, the question seems obvious. Get rid of Pete. Pete's old. We suck anyways. He's not that great of a coach, in my opinion, at least. And personally, everybody in the Seahawks fandom is like, why would we choose Pete over Russ? And my reasoning is that they just signed Pete to a 5-year extension. If anybody's going to go, realistically, it's going to be Russell Wilson. That's just, in my opinion, a fact. But, it's something that is going to be very interesting to watch. I have a gut feeling that it's all going to mellow over again. But if not, you very well might see a Seahawks team for the first time in 10 years without Russell Wilson starting at quarterback, which would be very intriguing to see.
That's crazy. It's a crazy thought. Do you think if that happens and Russ is gone and Pete's still the coach, do you really believe that Pete Carroll is going to want to rebuild? I mean, he's an older guy. He's been there for a long time. He's had nothing but sustained success. I mean, he got there and it wasn't necessarily pretty at first, but it didn't take him very long to turn that ship around there in Seattle and for them to just be consistent basically throughout the majority of his tenure there with the Seattle Seahawks. Do you see him wanting to rebuild? Do you foresee that being something he'd want to do? Or, if Russ is the guy who has to go, that Pete basically at the end of the day is like, all right, well, I guess I'm done too. Could you see that happening?
Maybe. I think mainly that's my logic for it not happening because in the organization, Pete Carroll is kind of the head of everything. And I know that sounds really weird, but ever since Paul Allen passed away in 2018, his sister Jody has taken over ownership, and she's been a relatively uninvolved owner. Actually, until this year, there's been no questions about, has she been involved? Has she done anything? Because we're winning games. And now all of a sudden, when we start losing games, we're looking at Pete Carroll, who's basically at the top of the organization in decision-making, even over John Schneider, because Pete technically was on the Seahawks before John Schneider was hired. And by some weird reason, Pete negotiated into his thing that I get to have more power than the general manager. It's kind of weird, but Pete has done that, and it's showing up in what moves the team has made over the years. And I don't know if Pete would ever let that happen. Personally, I don't think Pete would let that happen. I don't think Pete would let Russ be traded in a point in his career where he's 70 years old. He just signed a 4-year extension with his team. He doesn't want to leave like this. He doesn't want to end it like that. I mean, listen, I don't like Pete as a coach, but he's a great guy. He doesn't want to just abandon Seattle, riding away with all the money he's going to get in dead cap out of our pockets and go coach, I don't know, some college football team and ride out his career to the sunset. But I personally think that Pete Carroll would not let that happen. And if it does happen, I don't think it would be crazy to see Pete Carroll be like, you know what? I'm 70. What am I doing here? You just traded away the franchise quarterback. There's not a clear quarterback in this year's class. So even if we get an incredible pick from, like, say, the Giants, it wouldn't lead to a quarterback this year because it's a very quarterback light class, and it's about as weak as it looks, especially considering that one of my favorite quarterbacks in the class, Matt Corral, might have just had a serious injury from what we saw in a bowl game. And we don't know what's going to happen with him. And like I said, very weak quarterback class. I think if that were to happen, Pete would be like, why would I stay for a year where we suck? I'm going to be 71 by the time that we hope we get like a Bryce Young or whatever. But at that point, I don't see it happening that Pete would let that happen. And that's the main reason why, in my opinion, at the end of the day, I believe it'll just boil over into something where there's another kind of meeting between the two sides. They agree on something and it all kind of smooths out. And then the whole thing, I'm sure, will happen next year. And it's a whole saga at this point, but it's going to be interesting to see how it works out.
It's just going to keep on happening until someone
decides
to
keep going until the Seahawks win a Super Bowl. It's going to keep happening. And that's kind of the sad part about it. And it finally
it's a toxic relationship, right? It's a toxic relationship. It kind of
lights a fire under the butt of Pete and John, who now this offseason will have top 10 money in the NFL. They'll have about $58 million in cap space. To be fair, we are losing Quandre Diggs, or at least Quandre Diggs and Dwayne Brown are slated to hit free agency, and DJ Reed. So those, at least, I don't think Dwayne Brown is maybe in our best interest, but at least Quandre Diggs and DJ Reed are definitely in our best interest to try to bring back and re-sign, which will definitely cost us some dough. But even with that being said, we'll have a lot more money than any other team in the NFC West, which if we keep Russ and we can keep
until
Bobby,
the Niners trade Jimmy Garoppolo.
Until the Niners trade Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah,
which is still a possibility. It's still a possibility.
Still a possibility.
You two have a matchup this week. And if you're the Cardinals, Evan, is there still a chance that you guys can win the NFC West? Do you guys have to win and the Rams have to lose, and that open the door?
Yep. And if that happens, we play the 49ers. And if Dallas loses, if we tie with Dallas, we'll have the tiebreaker over them. So then how does it work? There's a chance that we would play the 49ers if you guys win and we win and Dallas wins, I think, because they would have one extra game ahead of us. There is a chance that we could play the 49ers. But yeah, basically, Rams lose, we win, we get the NFC West.
Wow. Okay. So there is a lot on the line then for you guys, because that gets you into that home field for a playoff game, which is nice to be able to play. No,
I don't want home field. We're 8-1 on the road, and we've had the majority of our losses at home. Let us be the away team. Doubt us. Don't pick us for any games. And I think we have a chance then.
All right. So then this matchup then is going to be interesting this weekend, because the Seattle Seahawks, Rashad Penny is kind of finally showing some glimpses, I think, of who Pete Carroll thought he was going to be. Sam is excited about it. But the run game is starting to figure some things out over there, and that when the run game's going, Russ tends to have a lot more success. I mean, shocking. When a quarterback has a run game to rely on, he tends to be a little bit better of a quarterback because teams can't just sit back and take away strengths and play to a quarterback's weaknesses and make them beat him beat the team in a specific way. How are you feeling about the Seattle Seahawks matchup this week with their improved run game? And coming off of, if this was pre-Cowboys win, I imagine you'd be a little bit worried, especially after that Lions loss, about anybody in the league. But coming off this Cowboys win now, how are you feeling about this game? And then after he gets done, Sam, I want to hear from you about what you're seeing from Kyler Murray and if you think you guys have enough with your secondary and the pass rush and the linebacking core to slow him down and keep him contained. So Evan, you first.
Yeah. So this game is less about winning, less about getting the NFC West division title and all that. This is more of another, not quite a get right game. The get right game was winning in Dallas after nobody picked us to win. That was a good away win that kind of put everybody else on notice again. Like, hey, we can still be this team. This game is about just improving on that and trying to gain more confidence in my mind. We're getting Marcus Golden back, Devon Kennard, our left tackle, DJ Humphries is going to be back off of COVID protocols. Newly signed defensive back, Rashad Breeland, who got unceremoniously waived by the Vikings. But he's coming in and now it's for a playoff team. So, who knows what that does to you mentally, right? Could be good things, or a guy could be just a head case and just a headache in the locker room and we don't need him. Only time will tell, and it gives us another week to get our defensive backs healthy because Marco Wilson will be out again. So this is a get right game in the sense of gaining confidence, guys. And that's what I want to see this team do. I'm curious to see if James Conner plays. I think he needs to get a game under him again before the playoffs come around. I need to see him going out there. I need to see the offensive line do what it did to them in the first game. No offense, Sam, and to other teams earlier in the year. I want them to just run the ball 30, 35 times, a healthy Chase Edmonds, healthy James Conner. I mean, if we're up, 2 or 3 scores towards the end, obviously you want to dial it back as much as possible, but I really want to avoid doing anything with Kyler Murray. If he's out of the pocket and running all this time, it's because it's the fourth quarter and we need him to, and maybe the Niners are taking care of business, right? That's what it comes down to. Keeping guys safe, gaining confidence, run the ball, and let the cards fall where they may. No pun intended at all.
All right. And Sam, what about you? How are you feeling about this game and this matchup and your guys' defense and containing Kyler Murray? And I mean, you've seen him struggle now a few weeks, basically since the ankle injury. It felt like, he just wasn't 100%. He wasn't right. He definitely got back on track this last week, but how are you feeling?
Evan talked about how this is all about winning, getting right. This is a game about let's get one more for Russ. That's kind of the vibe around the organization right now. Wow. That's kind of the vibe around the fans. We're like, if we can get this one and we can play well, maybe Russ won't want to leave. That's kind of the understanding in the organization right now. That's kind of the understanding among the fan base that if we can win this game, and it's against the Cardinals too. If we can just do that would be fun. That would be awesome. It would be a good way to end the year going in. And I guess technically not an awful team at 7-10. And the funniest thing is, if you look at the stats, we're like the best team in everything among losing records. So that's a plus right there. So if you want to take that as you want. But when you talk about containing Kyler Murray and establishing the run game, Bobby Wagner will not play this week. He sprained his ACL. Woo! He sprained his MCL.
Oh, my Lord.
He is going to be out. Luckily, we had Jordan Brooks, who appears to be some kind of miracle first-round pick for the Seahawks that actually worked. He is third in the NFL in tackles right now with 164, and he is absolutely balling out. He had a fantastic game against the Lions. And if you want to talk about the perfect linebacker to play Kyler Murray, this is it. This guy is sideline to sideline, played Big 12 football, and he knows and he has crazy good speed for a linebacker. And that might help contain Kyler Murray on some of these certain little, outside, like maybe like an option or a rollout, or even if you're running right up the middle, he can also lay down the boom and make a hit. So Bobby Wagner being out might not be a massive gash into this run defense. It will definitely hurt, but we have guys who can confidently fill in and play that middle linebacker role. And as it comes to the pass rush, this pass rush has suddenly, out of nowhere, awoken from a grave. And Carlos Dunlap has had, I believe, 4 sacks in the last 3 games. I believe you have Rasheem Green getting 4 sacks in the last 3 games. And we have Darrell Taylor, who has been absolutely headhunting people for the last 4 or so games. I think he's had a colossal hit. We're talking players leaving their feet, going horizontal midair and landing on the ground kind of hits. So this is a team that I don't know how they do it, but the energy is still there. They still play with a lot of energy. They still play with a lot of fire. And you goddamn know this is a team that is going to want to beat the Arizona Cardinals on the road in a stadium that appears to be cursed for us. We've had the entire LOB and their Seattle careers in that stadium, and we want some revenge.
You know what? You're right. I forgot.
Yeah, Cam Chancellor hurt his neck. Richard Sherman tore both of his Achilles, or at least like tore one and partially tore the other one, and then Earl Thomas broke his leg. We can't have Russ have his last game here too. This can't happen. This is like, I'm almost happy Bobby Wagner isn't playing this week, so we can say that this wasn't his final game too.
Is there any chance Russell Wilson comes out and says, "I don't want to play. I have nothing to play for this game"? Is there any chance that would happen?
I doubt it. Russ is such a competitor. Russ is the most competitive guy on the planet. Maybe his agents will come out and say, listen, in case we want to trade, we don't want Russ to go out and play a meaningless game and get hurt. But right. I don't think Russ would be that kind of guy to step in and be like, Coach, I'm not going to play this week. I got trade value on the line for the offseason. I don't think Russ will do that.
He's got too much of a leadership quality I think for that to be something he would do.
Yeah, that it would be a terrible example for all the guys, especially considering all the young guys.
I mean, you're the franchise quarterback. You've won however many trophies that the guy has won, and it's a meaningless game. You are the guy going somewhere. Even if you want him back in Seattle, isn't this just not the way to go about it? I would sit him no matter what, even if it wasn't his last game.
If I was Pete, I would sit him personally. If I was Pete, I would sit him.
Absolutely.
And, hell, let Jacob Eason go out and start for all I care. I mean, we're probably not going to win the game with Russ anyways. Let Jacob Eason or Geno Smith go out and play, and maybe Geno Smith. Let Geno Smith play for some Matt Flynn money in the offseason or something like that, because
hey, he did have a nice showing. He had a nice run.
He had a nice run. He actually, I went back and looked at the stats the other day. He had 5 touchdowns, 1 pick on like 68% completion percentage in 3 games. Yeah. I'm like, he didn't play awful. He didn't play as bad as I remembered him, at least.
I feel like though, if we go up 21-0 or you guys go up 24-3 or something, like there's probably going to be a quicker time pulling the plug than usual.
And same thing, and I would feel like it would be the same thing with Kyler Murray if we get a big lead. I imagine that Kliff Kingsbury wouldn't want to just be like throw him out, because you guys have made the playoffs anyways. I imagine that Kliff Kingsbury, I don't know Kliff Kingsbury much as a coach. All I know is that he's not incredibly highly regarded in most NFL schools, from what I've heard, and hopefully he makes the right decision on that.
He does have a very impressive record of second half of the seasons dating all the way back to college, where he has a losing record in the second half of seasons.
Yep. And it's something ridiculous, like 22-56 or something.
It's like bad. It's so
really,
bad.
really bad.
Ant messaged it to me when I think it was like the 3rd straight loss the Cards had. He sent me a text with the graphic, and I was like, "Oh, that's a funny meme." He's like, "No, dude, that's real." I was like, "That's not real," and he's like, "No, that's real." Since back at Texas Tech, like that's what it is. I was like,
"I think he got that from me." He faved it on Twitter or something, and I was like, "Yep, this makes sense."
Oh my Lord, that is. Oh, I feel for you there, man. I really do, Evan. I feel for you there, and I feel for you too, Sam, because you guys. I mean, the Cardinals dealt with this last year, although it looks like you're changing the narrative right now in a big way. And Sam, feel for you with quarterback situations and drama. Niners dealing with that heavily right now with the whole Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo debate and discussion, what this all means, who is the guy, what do you do? because the Niners control their own fate this week against the Rams. You win, you get in. You lose, you need the Saints to lose to the Falcons. And unfortunately, if you're the Niners, you play at the same time as the Saints. The Saints and Falcons play both 1:25 Pacific time on Sunday. So there is no like kind of feeling it out and being like, well, let's see what they do first and then we'll make a decision. You kind of just have to go in there and expect to win the football game. But who do you do that with? Do you do that with Jimmy Garoppolo, who is 5-0 against the Rams in his last 5 starts? Or do you roll up there with the young Trey Lance, hoping that A, Jimmy can maybe get healthy for the playoffs, but B, if you do that and you're able to get a win with Trey against this team, you now feel very comfortable in the playoffs no matter what quarterback you have to go with the next time you have to face him. And also the Rams are going to get 2 different versions of the Niners. You had to face him once with Jimmy, you had to face him once with Trey Lance, and now you go into the playoffs and, what do you expect? What do you do? 49ers fans have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions all week long. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how this plays out and, what practices kind of reveal to the world what's going to be the case in this game. But I mean, look, this has been an interesting week. Week 18, this additional week is crazy because it's impactful across the league. I mean, Sunday night you got, I believe it's the Raiders and the Chargers playing to get into the playoffs, both sitting with the same record. The Niners, if there was no week 18, if there was just week 17, Evan, you brought this up in pre-show prep when we were talking, the Niners would be in right now. It would be in the playoffs if there was no week 18 football. And I haven't heard a lot of 49ers fans talking about it. It's a very interesting point. If there was no week 18 football, things would look different in the league this year. Things would be drastically different. How teams would have played out the end of the season would have been different as well, because teams would have been a little more, maybe more aggressive or made some desperate changes late. All I can say about the Niners is we are getting healthy. So Dre Greenlaw potentially back this week. Emmanuel Mosley potentially back this week. Apparently the souring of the coaching staff on Josh Norman, who may not be starting in secondary for the 49ers anymore. Ambry Thomas kind of coming out of nowhere. The Niners have had 5 big rookies, if I really talk about it. I mean, Jalen Moore stepped in for Trent Williams a week that he was out against the Arizona Cardinals of all people. Oh, not the Arizona. It was the game after Arizona. And then also Talanoa Hufanga stepping up when Jaquiski Tartt went down. Ambry Thomas now stepping in at the DB spot. Elijah Mitchell, who's been a blessing for the running back room, and now Trey Lance. Did you guys watch any of his start last week? Did you guys see anything, and what did you think?
I thought Trey Lance played pretty well. Now, sure, it was against the Texans, and he's had a little bit of his rockier starts versus other teams. I believe he got second half versus Seattle, and he got the entire game versus Arizona. If that's correct, I think.
Yep.
But it is a good confidence game for Trey Lance if the Niners do in fact decide that maybe this is the variety that we want. The Rams won't expect it. Let's throw in Trey Lance. I mean, is there a kind of an idea in San Francisco that this is an open competition, or is it if Jimmy G is good, then Jimmy G is going to play? Or is this kind of something where it's like Trey Lance is,
Kyle's made it pretty clear that it seems like it's Jimmy's job. I don't think Trey did enough. This isn't like that Kaepernick Smith situation quite yet. I don't think it's there yet, where Cap kind of just caught fire. Like it was lightning in a bottle. Like the offense kind of took a jump. Deep ball was there. Run game took off. He was running the ball really well. Trey didn't do that. I mean, that first half was stagnant at best. It wasn't a great performance. The second half was a lot better, and he finally started to show a little bit of those flashes that everyone was hoping to see more of consistently. But Kyle's kind of made it clear if Jimmy's healthy, it's Jimmy's job. That's what's kind of been the messaging all year. He reiterated that after the game. He reiterated that Monday. And when people start asking him those questions, he gets visibly perturbed, I guess is the right way to say it, during press conferences. He's actually really sick of talking about it. It's funny because he's just tired of talking about it. He feels Jimmy has done enough to be the guy. Jimmy, the bad game against Tennessee. Kyle is, I got to give him credit. He's very patient with his quarterbacks. He's not patient at all with his wideouts, but he is very patient with his quarterbacks. He's being very patient with Trey. He's been very patient with Jimmy. So I think that's kind of what we're at. He's going to be very patient with Trey. He's not going to push it if he doesn't have to. If Jimmy's not healthy, it'll be Trey. If Jimmy is healthy, it'll be Jimmy.
Okay,
I will say
that's interesting.
Okay, Evan.
I will say what I saw from Trey Lance of what they showed on Red Zone, and what they showed on replays, I was actually pretty impressed. It looks like he was doing things we didn't see earlier in the season. I mean, that bootleg rollout, however many yard pass that was to Deebo Samuel for the touchdown. I don't
think it was
think
about
he
40.
did that. Yeah, he didn't do that X amount of weeks ago, and you were always talking about how he was wanting to run in and bruise into players when he was running. From the few times that I did see, it looked like he was actually going out of bounds and trying to avoid the hit at least a little bit more. He looked a lot better, and he just moves a little better than Jimmy G. I mean, he's a younger dude. He's probably more athletic. He just moves a little bit better. So I just see something a little bit more in him than Jimmy G, in my opinion. But I haven't watched every snap like you have, Alex.
I get it. Trey is going to bring something different to the table when the time's right. The question that every 49ers fan has is how is it not this time? How is it not right now? And we'll see. It's really going to come down to if Jimmy can grip that football, man. That thumb injury is no joke. Stafford played with it last season at the end of the year with the Lions and had surgery in the offseason. Jimmy's going to basically be in the same boat. He said already he's going to be having surgery in the offseason. So it really just comes down to grip. That Tennessee game, after it happened, it was really bad, and he struggled to grip the ball. But late in that football game, Jimmy dug deep and does what, for whatever reason, Jimmy does at the end of football games, which is when you need a drive and you need points. Whether it's the Green Bay Packers early in the season, whether it's Seattle later this year, even though it was a loss, getting them all the way down the field to the goal line, or whether that's that Tennessee game where he gets them all the way down the field, scores to tie, and puts the onus back on the defense. Hey, guys, I know I put us in a bad spot, but you know what? I just tied it up. Go give us a chance to make up for my earlier mistakes. Get a stop here, and we just couldn't do it. Jimmy somehow finds a way end of games, man, to dig deep and find something special. That's kind of why he's so polarizing, because you'll see him do that and then be like, well, where was that for 2 quarters? And it's like, well, in this game he had an excuse, right? He had torn ligament on his throwing hand. I mean, that kind of sucks, but it just feels like, I think for a lot of fans, it just feels inconsistent. But it is what it is. Jimmy is who Jimmy is. Hopefully he's able to get healthy and this team is able to do what it needs to do in the playoffs. We're going to see. It's going to be an interesting week 18, that is for sure, between you guys, right? The Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks facing off. Arizona, maybe an NFC West title if the Niners can take care of business against the Rams, which history shows if Jimmy plays 5-0 in the last 5 starts. Also, Aaron Donald gets to face Daddy Brunskill for the 49ers, so that's always fun because Daniel Brunskill, for whatever reason, is an all-pro when he plays against Aaron Donald and literally nobody else. If it's anyone else, Daniel Brunskill turns into a small child who forgets to block. I can't explain it. But it's going to be a very interesting week 18, guys. It was really good to have you both on again, and let them know where they can find you.
You can find me at the Always Compete Seahawks podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be talking about some Russ, Pete, Bobby drama going on there. So it'll be an eventful couple months throughout the postseason and going into March, because we won't have a lot to talk about and we're going to need to milk it dry, so stay tuned for that. And it was fun talking ball.
Yeah, and you can find me at Coach Evan B on Twitter, and He's on Fire podcast, anywhere you find your podcast, YouTube, all that fun stuff, at He's on Fire Pod on Twitter. So come hit us up and join. We've got a lot to talk about too, especially with a playoff run for the Cardinals. The Suns are doing very well right now too. Arizona State is a completely other story, but we're talking about all that stuff. So come hang, presented by ASAP Sports Network.
Go check them both out. Give them a subscribe. And while this may be the regular season, I guess, finale of the Quest for the West, we will do some special stuff with the both of you, and hopefully a Rams correspondent, later in the year after some free agency moves have been made, definitely pre-draft, and just get a feel for where everyone's at. Who knows, guys? Maybe a mock draft with all of us too, where we kind of go through and make some picks for the teams and kind of see where everyone kind of settles in and lays out heading into this 2022-2023 season. Good luck to both of your rosters. Evan, good luck to your Cardinals there trying to secure the NFC West. Not good luck to the Rams this weekend, as I would just prefer the Niners win and get in. The quest for the West is getting hot. It is the finale. Week 18 will decide it all. We'll see who comes out on top, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.